Yes, good evening, everybody. Welcome to today's Java class. I hope my voice is visible to voice is audible. And okay, so let me also share my screen before we start our class. The class has okay. So yeah, good evening, everybody. First of all, yes. So what we will do, we will first start with revising our previous class. Okay, so then we will go and deal with what we are going to learn new for today's class, right? Yes. And if anyone has any doubt, they can ask using the chat. Okay, so please drop your doubt using a message in the chat box, and I will try to clear your doubt as soon as possible. Okay, so just to revise, in our last class we have seen about the main method, right? So if you take any Java program, we normally write a main method. Okay, so any Java program you can have, that Java program is incomplete without a main method. Okay, so it is compulsory to write a Java program, write main method in a Java program. And the other important thing about a main method is the JVM executes our program. Okay, so it starts the execution from the main method. Okay, so wherever it sees the main method, the execution starts from there only. Okay, so that's why we have this main method, which is very important for Java. Okay, so then we learned about the signature. How do we write a main method? Okay, so we write public. If you see, let me just zoom it a bit. Okay, so we write public, then we write static. Okay, so I hope my screen is also visible. Okay, so if there is any disturbance, please intimate me. Okay, so then we write public static, then a void. Okay, so then we write the name of the method, which is main, and then we also write strings and args. Okay, I hope everybody remembers right now. Okay, so we normally write the first word is public. This is called as an access specifier. What is an access specifier? Access specifier mentions how far is my class or method accessible. If it is public, which means that my class can be viewed by any class, my method can be viewed by any class outside my program. Okay, by anyone. Okay, so that means that my class is public. Then we have the second type of access specifier, which is private. A private access specifier means that no class other than the method in which this class is can access this method. Then we have protected. In protected type of access specifier, all the methods inside the same package can see that method. Okay, so then we have default. Okay, so if you don't mention any type of access specifier, the default access specifier is being considered by the JVM. Okay, so then we have static. Okay, so if you remember, static is used by a method where we need to call that method without creating an object. Okay, if a method is static, we can call that method without creating an object, whereas for a dynamic method, we can call a method only after creating an object and using its dot operator. Okay, so then we have this void. What is this void? Void is used for a function which do not return anything. Okay, so if they return an integer type, we will write that int. If it is float, if it is returning a variable which is float, we will write float, string, character, respectively. Okay, so then we have this string and args. We use this to accept group of characters or string of characters from the command prompt. Okay, so this is in detail. We have discussed everything about the main method, and the notes for each of every one of that has been given below. Okay, so then we also saw these examples of creating okay, so creating objects of a given class. Okay, so we create objects, we can create objects inside the class, we can write a class outside the class. Okay, this was the one thing. Okay, so then we also saw how to instantiate, how to initialize values for an object, right? So we initialize number one using reference variable. Okay, so in reference variable method, we what do? We normally use the object. Okay, so we use the object and assign values. Then we saw about method. Okay, so if you see method here, we have used, if you remember, we have used a special method, a new method called as insert. Okay, so we were using this method called insert, and we were given objects, we were giving values to the objects. Okay, so then if we go further, we were discussing constructors. Okay, so what are constructors? Constructors are a block of code which look like a method. Okay, so that means that there is not much difference between a method and constructor. But what is the main thing we have about constructors inside a class, and they have the same name as the class, and they are called whenever the object for this constructor has been created, object for the class created. Okay, just remember that whenever you create an object for the class, the constructor gets called by default. Okay, so that is what we have. Okay, so if we go learn more about, let us revise constructor nicely. In Java, a constructor is a block of code. It is similar to a method. It is called when an instance of the class is created. Always remember that whenever you create an object for a class, the constructor gets called by default. Okay, so then it is special type of method which is used to initialize. Okay, always remember, most of the time constructor is used to initialize. What is initializing? Initializing means giving values to the parameters of the object. Okay, so whenever you want to give objects, we use constructor. Okay, so every time an object is created using the new keyword, the constructor is called by default. Okay, so this is the most important thing, and the other important thing is the name of the constructor is same as the class name. Okay, so always remember that whenever you see the name of the class and a method with the same name as the class, then that method is a constructor. Okay, so then we went on and see what is a default constructor. What is a default constructor? It is normally a basic type of constructor. Okay, let us see the constructor in here. Okay, if you see in here, we have a class. Okay, so what is the name of the class? Employee3. Okay, so this class has attributes. First is employee name, which is string type. Second is ID, which is integer type. Then if you see, there is a method. What is this? This is a method. And what is the name of this method? This name of this method is employee3. Now the name of the method is similar to the name of the class in which it is in. Then this means that this employee3, this is not a simple method, but this is a constructor. Okay, so inside this constructor, what are we doing? We are giving values to the attributes of the class, right? So we are giving the value of ID to be 0. We are giving the value of employee name to be XXX. Okay, so what is happening in here? We are initializing the value of the object. Okay, so now going further, if you see, we have a main method. Inside main method, I am creating object of this class. Okay, how am I creating object? I am writing employee3, name of the class, then any identifier even, then I am using this new keyword, and again giving the name of the class. Okay, so now when you give that create that object, if you remember, what is the important property of the constructor? The constructor gets called. Constructor is a method, right? So the constructor gets called every time you create an object. Okay, so that's why no need to call this method. It gets called by default whenever you write this line of creating an object. So it gets called, and the ID values are initialized and employee name values initialized. Just to check the value, I am writing even.id, and I'm also printing even.name. Whenever you run this program, you will get ID is equal to 0 and name is XXX. Okay, so this is what we have about constructor. Okay, I hope everyone is clear about what is constructor. Okay, so how do we create an object, and what is constructor used for? Okay, if you have any doubt about constructors, you can please ask now. Okay, so if not, we will go and see the second type of constructor, which is a parameterized constructor. Okay, so let me take back to the notes. Okay, where is the notes? We have the notes in here. Okay. Here, the second type of constructor is a parameterized constructor. I hope my voice is visible. Okay, so assuming that my voice is clear, I'm going further. If there is any problem, please intimate me. Okay, so then let us learn about Java parameterized constructor. Okay, so simple. What is the difference between a default constructor and parameterized constructor? Is that this constructor has parameters. Simple. Okay, so like every method can have a parameter, it cannot have a parameter. The same applies to a constructor, right? So a constructor can also have parameters, it might not also have parameters. Okay, so let us go and see this program, which is an example for parameterized constructor. Everybody, let me just maximize this. Yes. Okay, so if you see going on in here, first, what am I doing is I'm creating a class called as employee4. It is similar to the previous program, but I have done little tweaks. Okay. So again, we have employee name, which is one attribute of string type, and ID, which is another attribute of integer type. Then if you go and see, I have a method. What is the name of this method? Employee4. What is the name of the class this method is inside? It is also employee4. Then if you see like that, this means that this method is a constructor, right? This is a constructor. Clear. Okay, so now what it is doing, it is not only simple constructor, but it is receiving two values, two attributes, or two parameters. Okay, so this is receiving two parameters. The first parameter is ID, which is integer type, and the second parameter is employee name. Yes, so now let us go, and it also has display method. Neglect this. Let us go and create a main method. Okay, so in this main method, what I'm doing is I'm simply creating an object, but please see, after creating an object, in the end I am giving an integer value, and also I'm giving a string value. Okay, so let me just rewind you and go take you to the previous program. This was the previous program. If you see here, this was the default constructor, and while creating the object, I was not passing any values. Okay, so because my constructor was also not receiving any values, that's why I was not passing any value. Simple, well and good. Okay, here if you come back to today's program, here my constructor is receiving two values. The number one is ID and the number one is employee name. That's why you have to pass an integer value and pass a string value when you are creating the object. Okay, so if you forget, and while creating an object, if you don't give these two values, you are going to get an error. It will say that the constructor is compulsory to have the constructor two parameters which are missing. The compiler is going to say like that. Okay, so that's why whenever you are creating an object, always remember that if you are having a constructor, always while you are creating an object, the way you are creating the object should be similar to the way your constructor is. If your constructor is receiving no attributes, your object should not have any attributes. If your constructor is receiving two parameters, your constructor should have two parameters. Okay, so given that, now what happens is, while you are creating object itself, the values are being assigned. So now what I'm doing is, just to check whether values are being assigned, I am using this object and calling the method even.display. Okay, so whenever you call this method even.display, that ID is being printed using this keyword, and the name is also being printed using this dot ID and this dot ename. Okay, the same thing I have done using another object. Okay, so yes, one second. Okay, yes, everybody, I am back. There was small interruption. Okay, so what we were discussing in here is, we were creating two objects. Okay, so the same, while creating object itself, I am passing parameters because my constructor is a parameterized constructor. Okay, so I hope everyone is able to understand this, wherein we were creating an object. Okay, apart from creating an object, we were also initializing the value of the object using the constructor. Okay, so is everybody clear about this program? Or if you have any doubt, you can please ask right now. Okay, if not, we are going to proceed further. Okay, Okay, seems like we don't have any doubt. Okay, so let's go and see the next topic. Okay, so just let me revise what do we have in here. Okay, so here if I take you back, okay, so we were discussing the three ways to initialize object. Okay, so whenever you want to give values to an object, there are three ways in Java. The first is reference variable. Reference variable is using object and using dot operator, like e1.id is equals to 1, e1.name is equals to Ramesh. This is called as using the reference variable and assigning values to the object. Okay, so then in the second method we were using the methods. Okay, so if you go through the example, we have created a special method called as insert, and using that insert method we were assigning values to the object. Okay, so then in the third type we were using constructors, and in constructors we have defined a default or parameterized constructor, and using that constructor we were giving values. Okay, so to cover everything as a whole, we have three methods to initialize values of an object. Okay, so please go through all the three examples and see what we are doing in each one and be clear about each and everyone. Okay, so I hope everyone is everyone has understood, and I am going to proceed to the next topic. Okay, we have this small table wherein we compare a constructor and a method. You know everything, just we will deal with this table so that everything is clear. Okay, so what is a constructor? A constructor is used to initialize the state of an object. Always remember, we use constructor to initialize. What is initialization, sir? Initialization is giving values to the object. Okay, always remember what is initialization. Initialization is like, say you want to give e1 is an object and you want to give the value e1.id is equals to 1. This is called as initialization, and we use constructors mainly to initialize values, whereas we use methods to expose the behavior. Okay, so all the behavior of an object is inside the methods. Okay, so these methods are used to expose what the behavior of that object has. Okay, so a constructor must not return a type. Okay, always this is the most important type, most important point, and this has been used as a question in many exams. Okay, so always remember that constructor does not return anything. It is simply used to initialize values. It will initialize values and that's it. Okay, constructor will not have any return type and it will not return any value, whereas a method must have a return type. Okay, there must be a return type. If your method is not returning anything, you must inform it is a void. You must write void void, then that is also a return type. Void is a return type, which means that it is returning nothing. Okay, so then we have the next thing is a constructor is invoked implicitly. What does this mean? This means that you no need to call a constructor like we call a method. Like if you want to call display method, we write the name of the object s1 and we write a dot, then we write display. Okay, but there is no need to call a constructor. A constructor is called whenever you create an object for the class. That's why we say that the constructor is invoked implicitly, then the method is invoked explicitly. What does this mean? This means that we need to call the method by ourselves, creating an object. Okay, so the Java compiler provides a default constructor if you don't have any constructor in the class. This is also the important point. Always remember that if each and every program, every Java program has a constructor. Okay, so if you don't write the constructor by yourself, the Java virtual machine is going to create a default constructor, which is an empty constructor, and if you give the default constructor is overwritten by your own Java constructor. Okay, and the method is not provided by the compiler in any case. Okay, so there is no default method wherein JVM creates its own default method. Okay, you have to give any method. If you want to write a method, you have to give it by yourself. Okay, the constructor name must be same as the class name. Simple, you know this thing. The name of the class and the name of the constructor is same, and the method name may or may not be the same. Okay, method name can be anything. It can be of the same name as the class name. It cannot be also the same. Okay, so this is what we have. I hope now after you have gone through the differences, it is clear now for you what is a method, what is a constructor. Even though a constructor and method look similar, there is much difference between a Java method and a Java constructor. Okay, so I hope everyone has followed. Okay, so then let us go and see what do we have in the next. Okay, In the next concept, we have flow control. Okay, so what is flow control in Java? Okay, so what is, if you ask me what is flow control, sir? Flow control is normally the Java compiler reads all the statements in a program one by one. Okay, first it reads line number one, executes it, then line number two, line number three, line number four. That is what it executes in line, in an order. But sometimes you want to execute, you want the Java to skip some statements, go from one place to another place. Okay, so you want to control its flow. Okay, so whenever you want to control its flow, each and every programming language, there are different statements to control the flow of the compiler. Okay, so just to control the flow of the compiler, we have certain statements. Some of them are if statement, if else statement, nested if else, jump statements such as break, continue, and return, and we also have switch case. Okay, so these are some flow control statements in Java. Okay, so if anyone has you has experience of some previous language, like you might have like experience from C, or you might have learned C++ or Python. Okay, the same is the syntax. Okay, the implementation of all these statements is the same. Okay, so just for anyone who, just for the sake of revision, I am going to discuss this in brief, and then we will go further. Okay, so if most of you want this for me to explain each of this statement in detail, okay, if you think that you don't know everything about these statements in the, nicely, and you want to me to explain in detail, you can please ask. Okay, if most people of you agree, then I am going to discuss all of them in detail also. There is no problem. Okay, first let us see what are these statements, how do they work, and what are the respective syntax. Okay, so here if we see the first statement is if statement. Okay, so in Java we write if, then we have this brackets, inside this bracket we have condition. Okay, so then we have inside, then we have this bracket and this bracket. This indicate that this is the block for if loops block, and if the condition turns out to be true, whatever the statements which have been written inside the if block are going to get executed. If the condition becomes false, these statements are neglected. Simple. Okay, so this is what we have about if statement. Okay, so then what happens is the next statement we have is if else statement. What is about if else statement? Let me scroll it a bit. Okay, so what is about if statement? If this condition turns out to be true, this statement gets executed. If this statement turns out to be, this condition turns out to be false, whatever we have written in front inside the else block are going to be executed. This is the same thing, nothing new about if block and else block. Clear? Okay, so then going further, the next control loop is a nested if. What do we have about nested if? Whenever we have a if loop inside a if loop, then we call it as a nested if. Okay, so sometimes you want a certain statement to be printed if both of the conditions are true. Okay, in such type of cases we have if inside a if. Okay, so this statement gets executed only if the first condition turns out to be true, and whereas this statement gets executed if this and this both the statements turn out to be true. Okay, so this is what we have about a nested if. And then we have the third is an else if ladder. Okay, we normally call as else if ladder. This is used whenever you have more than one condition. Okay, so let's say your program requires not only one condition, but checking different conditions, and whenever those conditions are true, you have to print those respective statements. Okay, so in this scenario, what are we going to have? We are going to have an else if block. So we have if else if. Okay, if this condition just one second. Yes, sorry, people. Okay, so I had small disturbance. Okay, so here we were discussing about else-if ladder. Okay, so what is an else-if ladder? One second. Okay, so in else-if, what is about else-if ladder is it is used whenever you want more, you want a condition to you want your program having more than one condition, then you are going to use an else-if ladder. Okay, so similarly we use this keyword called as else-if. Okay, you can have any number of else-if statements, and in the end we have an else statement. Okay, so if this condition turns out to be true, we are going to execute this statement. If this condition turns out to be true, then this statement. Okay, depending upon the condition of which else if statement is true, its own respective statement is executed. If none of them is true, then we will have this whichever statement is written under else statement will get executed. Okay, so this is what we have about else if statement. Okay, going further, we have three jump statements in Java. The same thing where in C language also the three jump statements in Java are break, continue, and return. Okay, so these are the three jump statements. The first is a break. Okay, so I think do we have any examples? No. Okay, so what happens is, okay, okay, so just to explain you this, how much time do we have? We have 10 more minutes remaining. So what we will do is we will write a program in here. Okay, so let me take you in here. Okay. Okay, here I have a pre-written program, so I will remove this. Okay, so I have a main method also. So okay, so what we will do is we will keep this pending right now. We will deal with jump statements. Just if I want to explain you this jump statement, first let us understand about one of the loops. Okay, so once we are good with the loops, then we can understand what is a jump statement. Okay, so here let us leave this jump statement and see what is a loop. Okay, so this for loop is also a bit okay. So first let us see what is a while loop. Okay, so what is a while loop in Java? Okay, first of all, what are loops? Okay, so in first till now we were dealing about different types of statements, like we had if statements, if else ladder. Okay, so nested if. Okay, so these are called as statements because they are used to control the flow, whereas these are loops. Why do we need loops in any programming language or in Java? Because whenever you want to execute same block of statements again and again, you need not to write it in again and again. You can keep all the statements inside a loop. Okay, so normally a loop is used to execute a single block of code again and again. Okay, so we have for loop in Java and we also have while loop. Okay, so we will deal with for loop. First let us learn what is a while loop. Okay, so inside while loop, if you see, this is the syntax. Okay, so first we have a while, then we have a condition. Okay, so once if this condition is turns out to be true, what happens is it will go and it will execute all the statements. Okay, whatever the updation has been provided is done. Once all the statements has been executed, it will go back and it will again check for the condition. If that condition turns out to be true, it will again execute and it will again go back. It will go on checking the condition until the condition gets false. Once the condition gets false, okay, it goes out of the loop. Okay, so this is what we have about a while loop. Okay, so this is the same loop which you have in C or Python. Okay, so what we will do is now we will have a simple implementation about while loop. Okay, so what is this while loop going to do? Okay, so let's say a is equals to 10. Okay, so I want this a to be integer, so I am going to have an integer type of value. Then I am going to use this while and a condition while a less than 10. Okay, so instead of a here, let us start with I. Okay, so here what I will write is I will initialize I value to 1. Okay, so since that initialization has been done, now let me print I value. Okay, so let me just, instead of here a, let me just write I, and here whenever in Java you have to write, not a simple print statement will not work. You have to write system.out.println, and inside this you have to write I. Okay, so then a semicolon. Okay, so now what is going to happen in here? The I value is 1, right? So I miss one more thing, which is I is equals to I plus 1. Okay, so given that we have this thing in here, one second. Okay, Yes. So let us see. We have I value 1. Okay, so 1 is greater than 10, right? So it will print 1. Okay, so it will print 2. Okay, so it will go on increasing the I value from it will be 1. 1 will be printed. It will be 2 will be printed. It will go on till 10. Once the I value becomes 11, 11 is not greater than 10, right? So this condition becomes false and it will come out of the loop and it will exit the program. This is what is going to happen. Okay, so now what we will do is let us run this program and see if we have any type of errors or we are going to see any output. Okay. So it is taking a bit of time. Okay. So just give it some time. Okay, so if you see right in here, we have all the numbers being printed from 1 to 9. Okay, so because 10 is not less than 10, we are getting all the numbers being printed, which is less than 9. Okay, if you see, I have switched this greater than symbol. Okay, so I hope you were able to follow. There was a small mistake from my side. Instead of here writing greater than, I was writing less than. Okay, so what happened is nothing was being printed. Okay, then just I realized that the condition was never turning out to be true and nothing was printed. Okay, so I hope everyone is able to understand how this while loop is working, right? So now what I will do is I will write a break statement in here. Okay, so now while loop, that working of while loop is understood. Now what I will do is here I will write a while if loop. Okay, so if I is equals to 5. Okay, so if the value of I turns out to be 5, what I will do is I will write a break statement. Okay, so this is what I have about break statement. Okay, so what is this break statement is used for? Whenever the compiler sees a break statement, it will come out of the loop. Okay, so because when compiler encounters this break statement, it will come out of this while loop. Okay, and it will not print the remaining values. Okay, so when I value is 1, it will print. Okay, so when I value is 2, it will print. When I value is 3, it will print. When I value is 4, it will print. But when I value is 5, it won't be able to print, because if I have written here, if I is equals to 5, I am asking it to break. That's why it will come out, and we won't see all the values up to 10. Now we are going to see only values up to 4. Okay, so whether it is going to work same or not, let us check by running the program. Okay, so 1 second, run. Okay, I have pressed F5 and I have run. If you see what is the output, now I am able to see only 1 2 3 4. Why is it? It is because whenever the value of I is 5, I have set the program to break. Now it has break and come out of the loop. Always remember that a break statement is used to make the control come out of the loop. Okay, so that is the same thing I have given you here. Let me underline this. Okay, so here break statement is used to terminate or exit a loop. Okay, so I will give you this program. Okay, so the next thing we have this here is, let us see what is this continue statement used for, right? So we also have continue, right? So what I will do, let me write continue in here. Okay, and a semicolon. Okay, so what does this continue do? This continue is used to skip the current iteration. Okay, so let me take you and see the difference definition also. What happens is continue stops the processing the remainder of the loop for this particular iteration. What happens is whenever the compiler sees this continue statements, it will exit. Clear? Okay, so it will skip all the iterations in the current loop. Okay, so let's say whenever I value is 1, it will print 1 because I1 is not equals to 5. Whenever I value is 2, it will print 2. Whenever I value is 3, it will print 3. Whenever I value is 4, it will also print 4. But when I value is 5, 5 is equals to 5. So what it will do, it will skip that current statement because it is skipping everything below the while loop. It will not print. Okay, so it will not print that respective what we will say, that respect to I value, and it will also not increment. Okay, so because it will not increment, what we will do is, okay, So let us just check this for once. Okay, so yeah, we have an output from Soumya. Okay, I doubt that output also. Just let us check. Okay, so if it is not giving that respective output, we will correct it. Okay, so okay, let us run this for once and see. Okay, we can experiment, no problem, right? Only you will learn only when you experiment, right? So see, it is giving right now only till 5. This is the case because it is not even able to increment. Okay, so what I will do is, let me do a small altercation here is, let this be in here, but once this is over, okay, so let us also write an I in here also. Okay, let us start with 0 and I is equals to I plus 1. Okay, I will explain you. No need to worry if you are having any doubt. I will explain you why is this happening. Okay, so please give me a bit of time. Okay, so it will implement. Okay, let me comment this for now. Right. Let me remove this. Okay, just give me a bit of time. Run this program. Okay, so this is the output I was expecting, and I've gotten the same. Okay, so if you see in here, okay, so whenever we were writing a break statement, right? So all the iteration has been broken, right? So now instead of a break statement, now I do have a continue statement. What is this continue statement going to be? If you see here, we don't have a 5 in here. Why? Because let us go and see in our code, whenever the value of I is 5, I have written a continue statement. What is this continue statement going to do? It is going to skip everything written after this block only for the current iteration. Okay, always remember, it will skip the rest of the block only for current iteration, and the next iteration continue. Okay, so this is the major difference we have between a break statement and a continue statement. Okay, so in break statement, the loop, the control comes out of the loop completely, whereas in continue statement, only the current iteration is skipped and the rest iterations are carried on as they are. Okay, so then we have a doubt from Manasa. She is checking, can we use nested if in while loop? Okay, yes, if you want, if your requirement is asking, so you can freely use a nested if inside an if loop. Okay, you can have a if inside if. Okay, so there is no restrictions on using a nested if inside a while loop. Okay, so that is what we have about a break statement. Okay, let us see in here, we have a break statement, continue statement, and there is also a return statement. I hope everybody knows what is a return statement. What is this return statement is used for? It is normally used in functions or methods. It is used to return the control back to the calling function. Okay, so whenever a function is called, the control is branched from the calling function to the called function. Okay, so when the called function completes all the process, it will have a return statement, and this return statement will return all the given values. Okay, so yes, so that is what we have. And we have also seen these 3 statements, all the if statements and the jump statement and a while loop. Okay, so because we are out of time for today, we will see the for loop tomorrow, because for loop is important. Okay, and we also see what is this do while going to do, and then we will deal with what are different types of arrays we have in Java. Okay, so if you still have any doubt, you can please ask. And if you want, if you want me to discuss each and every loop in detail with some examples, okay, we can have that. Okay, so if not, if everyone thinks that we are good with this, we have practiced all this in C language, we will proceed further and we will learn concepts which are unique and important for you to learn Java, so that we will proceed quickly into the next coming concepts. Okay, so we are out of time. Okay, so we will meet tomorrow at the same time, which is 7:10 for Java class. Okay, for recorded videos, all these are being recorded. Okay, so but we are working on the CSCE app right now. Okay, so recorded videos are available only for people who have paid the fees for certificate. Okay, so please complete the process. I will share all the recorded videos as soon as possible. If the website is up and running, I will upload all of them and share you. Okay, so I'm currently working on them. Please give me some time. Okay, so yeah, thank you everybody.